So the universe, you would what's your position on that? Would you say it's eternal? Would you hold that it has a cause, or we don't know? What's your position?
Blitz and I might have different positions. I'm going to be faster on this. I know that the universe was condensed and began to expand, and I don't know anything before that.
Would you say this
Yeah,
matter always?
same.
Yeah. Would you say this matter always existed and then began to expand, or would you say
I don't
this
take a position on that for me.
Okay.
I would say that matter, or some sort of physical entity, has existed at every moment in time.
Okay. That's fine. And then would you hold to the act and potency distinction, or would you hold to a
Sorry,
different
what?
the act and potency distinction?
I don't.
Background change.
And that's
I
an
don't know what that means,
Aristotelian thing.
but maybe I misheard.
An Aristotelian / Aquinas kind of had his own version of it. But I do not. I don't think you, because when you first present the distinction, it actually seems very agreeable. Let me if I show Blitz an example, he'll be like, oh yeah, I accept that. But it gets so this is actually red, right? This is it's a property of red. It's actual. It's been actualized. It has the potential to be crushed. Okay. And so if I crush it, I'm the actualizer. Its potential went from potential to actual in terms of getting crushed. And so it moves from potency to act. Okay. Now that sounds pretty agreeable, but there's
Doesn't really. I don't know what potential means. Potential seems like it's just like a vibe.
I prefer you have a piece of wood and the fire is actually hot, and then the wood goes from potentially hot to actually hot, right? So that's the example I usually.
What does it mean to be potentially hot?
So it has the possibility of becoming hot, right? So if you have flammable wood, right, it has a possibility of being hot, right? It's not actually hot right now. So when it's actually hot,
that doesn't seem like it has any it's not a property of the system, right?
Yeah, so
it seems it doesn't actually describe anything about the system if something has potentiality, because the potentiality could be everything. So it seems like it contains no information about the system.
And I will say, they think that Aquinas, Aristotle, they think potentiality is part of the object. It's part of it. Like hair is part of my body. Potentiality, the potentiality for me to I don't know, get burned or get hot is part of my body as well. It's a real, real property.
It seems very vibe based.
So I don't. That's one I prefer to talk about tendencies, probabilities. It would probably get hot, or it has a tendency to get hot if you apply heat, and that's just based on regularities of what happens when you add fire to this thing. In my experience, I don't want to be committed to saying that it has there's a part of this thing that has the potential to get hot. I just want to say that if I in my past experiences, if I put fire on this thing, it catches flame, and so that's what it means for me to say that it'll potentially burn.
So what?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, just from so. And here I'm showing my science or my scientist brain rather than my philosophy brain, but we can fully describe a thing by specifying, what the thing is made out of, what all of these, and none of these things are what it will be at some point in the future, right? It's just what it's doing right now, maybe what it did in the past. So it seems like this is I mean, not to be uncharitable, but this sounds like the kind of thing that Aristotle would have said when he said that things have this tendency to fall down, and that's why things fall, and not because there's
that's exactly that would be potential for Aristotle, right?
Okay, yeah, it just sounds like it sounds like ancient Greek philosophy. That's not relevant.
I have my skill. Oh, that's the wrong book. I have the dictionary for this is in the scholastic tradition. Let me get an exact definition so we're on the same page while Rumi says what he wants to say to that.
Yeah, so usually, well, from my what I know is that usually like how I would like account for change, right? So when you see change in the world, right, this is usually from going from like one state to another. So going from like a possibility to get hot to actually getting hot, right? And so that's like how I usually account for change. So when I would like, well, why I brought it up was when we was talking about like the universe, with like all the atoms and everything, right? It going from like, let's say hypothetically the atoms did exist like from eternity, and then they came together, right? And then they created the universe, right? Then what I would say is, look, there's these atoms that have like something moved them together. The unmoved move at that argument that the atoms were moved together either by themselves or like by another. And if they got like moved by another, then why is this thing that moved them by another? And if they was like moved by another, then like that's why I would like usually call God, because he can't like move himself. So the atoms would like move together by another, right? And that's where I was going down. But if somebody like rejects the atom potency, like usually what's the other methods of accounting for like change?
The way I think about change is, if you have a state, or either state, event, object, I guess a thing, okay, and if it has a property, and if it acquires a property, in either in the next event, okay, then that counts as a change. If it loses a property, it counts as a change. So that's basically how I understand change.
Are you
And
asking about what causes change, or
What
how
is
we
it,
describe
right?
change?
What is change right? Is that what you're asking?
yeah, like what is change, and like how are like things usually moved?
I mean, those are two different questions, right? I mean, yeah, like the one way to describe change is just when there is a difference in states between moments, as Danny said. How things move, well, I mean, that's a question that's perhaps more philosophical. There might not be a how. There might not be like some like thing that we can pinpoint. Isn't this a whole? Now, I'm no philosopher, but isn't this a whole Hume thing with causation? And maybe we should reject it. Maybe there's a reason to talk about that. I mean, look, the universe does things. Electrons are attracted to protons. That's a thing that we observe. Is there a cause to that? Well, we could start talking about deeper and deeper causes, but is there like a bottom cause? Maybe not. Maybe there's just this is just a feature of our universe.
Well, I don't know like any analytic. Like I haven't studied it. That's something like Danny. I don't like study.
Yeah, here's
Hume.
the definition of change according to just a metaphysics dictionary. This is the definition I take. An object undergoes change if and only if it possesses a property at one time and it does not possess this property at another earlier or later time. That's my
Okay.
definition of change.
And then how would you define like motion?
Well,
The same, just the property being spatial position.
So
yeah, exactly.
That's how I would define it.
Okay, so this like these properties. So let's say the atoms before they came together, right, and create the universe. How would you say they like acquired this property to like move together to create the universe?
Well, I don't think that's what happened. I don't think that like the atoms like moved together to create the universe. Look, so either the universe has always existed or it hasn't. If it always existed in one form or another, well, then the universe either had some sort of spatial component or it didn't. If it had some sort of spatial component that has always existed, then the notion of motion has always existed, because you always have positions as a property, and so you can always talk about the change in positions, which is motion. If it didn't have some sort of spatial component, then in some sense space or space-time, if you will, is some sort of deeper emergent thing that has always existed or emerges from something more fundamental that we don't yet understand, in which case we could describe the motion as emergent from some simpler thing or from some deeper thing. Like an example would be we describe the temperature of a thing. The temperature of a thing is a property, but it's really an emergent property insofar as it's an average of the kinetic energy of jiggling particles, right? And so like if you zoom in enough, you don't get temperature anymore. You just get, the energy of oxygen atoms or whatever. And so in that sense, motion would be an emergent thing where you have some sort of, large system that when it's sufficiently complex or whatever, you get some sort of notion that behaves like the way that we would understand space.
Yeah. So
On the flip side, if there was a
yeah.
first moment, and that first moment had space, then problem solved.
Yeah. So you said like it's emergent. So like
It could be.
So what do you mean by like emergent?
Yeah, it's a hard question, right? Because we're so used to thinking in terms of space. But the example I gave is that temperature is kind of an emergent property of large systems. The idea would be that space would be, at least akin to that. That's,
A typical
on some
definition of
deep-
emergence. I don't know if
Yeah, go ahead.
tell me if Blitz, if you agree with this definition. But typical, like it's not. He's right, and even in philosophy, it's not a clear concept. But if I use that term, I mean something like you had a set of things that have a set of properties that, when arranged or combined in some kind of way, you get new properties.
Yes.
Okay, something like that. So hydrogen and oxygen, right? Two hydrogens and an oxygen, when they're arranged in a certain type of way, you might get new properties that are the properties that we understand to be water. Something
Yeah.
like that.
Like wet.
Yeah. Wow. Water's not wet. Wow. I don't think like maybe. Yeah. So these like atoms that like came together, like what made them come together, like that. That's
It just
the question.
depends on that. It depends on that, on what happened. I mean, that's sort of like asking, like, how do people get married? Well, they could be arranged. They could go on an online dating site, or they could. It's just like it just depends on what. There's different explanations for each marriage.
Yeah. So would you say like they pushed themselves together, or would you say like another pushed themselves together?
I'm fine. Well, let's just put Hume on the side here. Let's bracket Hume's concern about causes, just so that's easier to talk. Because Hume would be fine with using the term cause. He just doesn't think there's this weird metaphysical thing that is cause. So yeah, there's going to be an arrangement. Okay, there's going to be a lot of okay. When we create rockets, right? Blitz can correct me. You have like a rocket full of oxygen and hydrogen gas, right? Oxygen gas and hydrogen gas, right? And then there's some kind of ignition, right? There's some fire, and then you get water, right? Like, so the ignition, the us putting hydrogen and oxygen gas in two tubes, I suppose, and then igniting them causes water and heat.
Yeah. So this ignition, right, would be the thing that causes these two things together to do something. So well, what is with the example of like before the universe was created, and let's say hypothetically the atoms always existed, what was like the ignition that like causes the atoms to like come together and like explode?
So there could be some sort of, I actually don't think, I don't know what it would mean for there to be an external cause, but there are other rocket fuels, these are called hypergolics, that when they mix together, they ignite on their own. Could be like that.
Yeah, so like they wasn't always mixed together, right? Unless you believe like
Sure. In this hypothetical universe creation scenario, sure, maybe they're not always mixed together to begin with. And then maybe there was some phenomenon that occurred internal to them. Maybe they shuffled around sufficiently, and then they got into just the right arrangement that they could mix, and problem
but
solved.
like
I mean, look, like the details of how this happened depends on the details of how it happened, right?
Like, do you think a possible explanation that like something moved these like atoms together to cause like an explosion?
If by something you mean some sort of force, sure. I mean, you could have like gravity, but again, like we have no idea what it is, and like we have there's no data on the matter.
Yeah, like I'm not saying like it's like 100% certain, but let's say like hypothetically, like from my worldview, let's say like I believe God was this like force that pushed these atoms together to create the universe. Is that like a possible explanation, or would you say that's like an absurd explanation?
I mean, it depends on what you mean by God. If by God you mean like, some natural phenomenon that has a tendency to cause atoms to approach each other, then sure, I guess if that's what you mean by God, that's fine. But like, if by God you mean some sort of supernatural thing, I don't know how a supernatural thing acts on the world. So
So like
it seems kind of unusual to seem unusual to say that.
Like in this scenario, I'm just saying like God means like
Wait, Rumi, your
beyond-
question was whether it's possible.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on, there's certain conceptions of God that I find unintelligible, but the ones that are intelligible, I think it's possible.
Yeah. So you would say like
Logically.
yeah. So it's logically possible that there's this like unmoved mover that like pushes these atoms together or something.
Okay. Well, once you using that term, so you're bringing in a whole history of, whole tradition in, right? I think it's possible that a mind, right, or an intention could cause the expansion of the universe, but that just means that there's no I don't see a straightforward contradiction. Like I can't. If someone asked me, give me a contradiction for an intention, saying that, give me a contradiction if I were to say an intention can't explain that expansion, I would be empty-handed. So now, if you add on like an atemporal intention, I think I can give some kind of contradiction, right? But if it's just all you're saying is like in one moment there was a mind with an intention to create, and then the next moment there was the effect of that creative will, I just don't see a straightforward contradiction there.
Yeah. So
I mean, so I mean, if this notion of God is consistent with like a simulator, like pressing the space bar and then the particles suddenly start moving inwards because he programmed it so that when you press the space bar they accumulate a velocity, or their velocity is reassigned so that they like if that's what you mean by like if that notion is compatible with your notion of God, then fine. Yeah, that's possible. I don't
Yeah,
think it's
so,
likely, but it's logically possible.
yeah. So before like going into like how to define God or like what's your definition of God, I think that's like the first step to see. Let's say somebody defines God first as like necessary. Would you say like it's wrong to hold that this like let's say we call it X for now. Say this X right is necessary, and it pushes things together or moves things together to cause the universe. So this X which is necessary pushes these atoms together to like cause the universe. Would you say like there's an issue with that?
Well, I don't know what Blitz has to say about that, but what I don't really understand well, first of all, when you say, I'm assuming that you don't mean logically necessary, you mean metaphysical necessity, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and that modal type. So just so that everyone can keep up, because so there are only really two modalities that I accept: logical necessity and physical necessity. Okay, so something that's logically necessary must be true because of certain axioms of a particular formal system that you accept. So it's logically necessary that bachelors, that if you're a bachelor, then you're a man, and if you're so if John Blitz is a bachelor, well, actually Bliss is so let me Bliss is not he's actually married. So if you're a if one is a husband and they're married, Blitz is a husband, therefore Blitz is married. Those are two true premises. It's logically necessary given the premises, the truth of the premises, that Bliss is married, right? But so that's kind of a necessity that I accept. That there are no true contradictions. Another thing that's necessarily true for me. Basically, logical necessity pertains to what is necessitated by the formal system that you've adopted. But a physical necessity is just based on certain laws or formulas that are discovered or used in science. You can get necessity from that. But other than that, I don't know what necessity means. I don't know any. I met this extra third in the middle metaphysical necessity. No one's really been able to explain to me any kind of how metaphysical necessity is sort of understood, or whether I should adopt that modal type.
So right now you only hold to like logical necessity, but not necessarily metaphysical necessity.
Right. Mm-hmm.
All right then. No, I'm not like advancing this subject, right? with logic. Like I know the distinction that people draw between like logical and metaphysical necessity, right?
Mhm.
They're going to say like it's like an argument that's usually brought up against the Trinity, that like if you can't share a contradiction with God not being three persons, then like it's a contingent truth, which would make like the Trinity like contingent, right? And then people like draw between like metaphysical necessity and like logical necessity.
Mhm.
So you would say like with this example back to like the atoms and something like causing or moving them together, you would say this isn't like a logical contradiction, but like or like not logically necessary, but like a metaphysical necessity. Like
That's
how
what they
that-
want to say, but I don't even understand that modality. I know when people say when they say it's logically necessary or that it's physically necessary, I don't know what people tend to mean if it's metaphysical necessity. If there's something metaphysically necessary.
Okay. So if we didn't have if we took out the example of there was this thing that moved them together, would you just say, look, we don't know what moved them together, or would you say that like they moved by themselves, or how would you like explain it?
Okay, well, let's say there was, just for sake of argument, an intention that moved or that caused. When you say move, I'm going to interpret that as cause.
Yeah.
When let's say there's some intention that caused the universe to expand. Okay, and that presumably that's kind of what you believe, that God has a will, and that will explains why there's this motion. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so I would just think if that ended up being true, fine. But I just don't see why we attach that the intention is necessary, or that the mind that of the intention is necessary. I wouldn't go that far.
So you would say like it's contingent, it's not necessary.
Right, at least logically speaking. But the physical, and presumably it's not a physical mind, right? So it's not like it doesn't even, the physical modal domain doesn't even apply.
So what do you mean by like physical here?
Oh well, that's a good
Made of
question.
stuff. Made of stuff.
That's basically Aquinas' definition. If it's made of, if it's composite, well, material things aren't necessarily composite.
Yeah.
You know, but
I mean something more mundane, namely, you know, you have electrons and protons and photons and neutrons. It's that, and then the stuff that we describe with formulas, I guess, would be another way of putting it.
tricky things though, because there's relations, like I'm shorter than you, and the shorter than relation, is that physical or not?
Yeah.
I don't think that's physical. I think it's a description of physical things. But
Okay.
I think it'd be
But
like
the problem here is that you've asked a difficult question about what physical is. When in these conversations, I typically define that which is physical can be described by regularity or something like that, or depends on things that regularly behave, something like
yeah.
that.
So when you say like a physical mind, are you saying something like that is like simple?
I don't mean to say that. I'm saying that the physical domain doesn't apply to presumably whatever caused the universe. I wouldn't think so. Maybe it might, but I wouldn't. I thought that if we're taking your view, the physical necessity, we wouldn't say God is physically necessary. That would be a category error, in other words.
Yes. Like
Okay.
God would be like necessary.
So the only
But,
two candidates that would work is logical necessity and metaphysical necessity, but not God. You can't derive God from first, for first principles in any form
yeah,
of system.
I don't think like God will be like logically necessary.
And most smart theists don't do. I mean, like certain there are formulations of the ontological argument that might suggest that God is logically necessary. So you might go that route. But as far as metaphysical necessity, it goes back to the problem. Okay, what is it? Because how I think about necessity, essentially, in general, no matter what modal type you're in, is you have certain facts, and from those facts, you get necessity. That's basically what's going on when I say something's necessary. In logical necessity, you have first principles in a formal system that get you necessity, right? In physical necessity, you get presumed scientific laws, formulas, and then you get necessity. So what metaphysical facts are you appealing to suggest that this thing, God, is metaphysically necessary? That would be another way of asking the question.
Okay. And then like the universe, you would say like it's contingent. It doesn't have to like exist at all.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, if we accept the I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot, but it's interesting stuff, and hopefully people are getting some ideas about where I'm coming from. But so if you accept this distinction between concrete objects and abstract objects, so concrete objects do stuff. They can be the effect of things, and they can be the cause of things. Okay, they can change. Okay,
Yeah.
abstracta is notably something that doesn't change. It's if it does exist, there's like it's at least on some views it's kind of spaceless and timeless, and some people for that reason want to nominalize that stuff. I think Blitzling's that way, but the point is that I don't know what it means. I can sort of get behind the idea of certain abstracted being necessary because they ground propositions that are necessarily true. So that would be the candidate of, but those abstract would be logically necessary. So suppose 2 + 2 = 4 is a logical necessity. And a
Okay.
Platonist would think that you need to have the number 2 and the number 4 and certain, there needs to be a proposition that exists to ground that statement as being true. And that proposition might exist necessarily, but that's a form of logical necessity, as I understand. But I might get that, but I really do not get what it means to say something concrete is necessary in any kind of way except physically necessary. Like that's because you can get physical necessity from natural laws or formulas or whatever. So when God is a concrete object, God can move things, he can do things. Abstract, he's not abstract.
Yes, God would be abstract. I mean, like not abstract. Sorry, God would be concrete in the sense that like he exists outside the mind, but he doesn't
Well,
have
he'd be
like the
concrete
ability
because he
to-
moves things, right? The second that you engage in causal relations or you motion in any kind of way, whether you're the effect or the cause or the first mover or the actualizer, you are now that kind of object is concrete. When you add the term necessary to concreta, I don't get it unless it's physical necessity.
Okay, so you would say like that. So your position would be so if it's only like if there's no metaphysical necessity and it's only like logical necessity and everything, you say like everything is like contingent. Like right now, we're all contingent. The universe is contingent and everything.
Yep, pretty.
I'm not even
every
sure I would
sing-
agree with that, but that's fine. That's fine. I mean, I can't say for certain, but I would like. It actually seems quite plausible that there is, in some sense, like a logical or a physical necessity of the universe, but whatever that might mean.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think Blitz and I agree that anything physical is logically necessary, right? Like,
Yeah.
there
I
could
mean,
be.
you could just conceptualize anything, right?
Right. You could just think of an empty world with there's nothing. Maybe there's abstractive, depending whether you're a Platonist or not. But there's no universe, no physical stuff at all. In which case, then every single physical thing is logically contingent. I'm fine with that view.
Okay, that's fine. That's why I wanted to touch on the universe. What other topics do you have there? Because I touched on like morality.
Well, look, there are people who've been
All
waiting.
of them.
If you want, come back because I don't know if we're gonna stop getting requests and you come back and
Of course, that's fine. So thanks for having me. I hope
absolutely. See you, Rumi. And Rumi,
All right, see you.
do you have a WhatsApp? Because I try to contact you.
Yeah, I do have a WhatsApp. I can like
Can
send you
you
my
send me
number.
your WhatsApp? Because are you still Catholic?
I'm trying to like sort out some issues right now.
Okay.
I was like looking into Islam for some time, but I think because they like deny divine simplicity, and I think it's like a logical contradiction denying divine simplicity if you like believe in God.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well,
that's
send me
why.
your WhatsApp. I'm gonna see what's up. Okay, because you're I just want to make sure you're doing okay because it can be tough, leaving a denomination.
Of course, it was right.
All right, see ya.
All right, see you. Bye.
Bye. All right, so next person.
Hi, Miguel.
Hello.
Oh, your mic is very quiet. Is that just me?
Let me see if I can get somewhere where you can hear a little better. Sorry about that.
That's better.
Hey, so yeah, I just basically I've read a lot of books from years ago. And I ran into a group like 10 years ago who claimed to pretty much.
Could you get closer to your mic?
I'm trying. Should I? Maybe, let me see if I can. Is there? Can you hear me better now?
It'll do, but if I just making sure, like,
Yeah,
if the
it'd
mic
be
is,
better
it
if you
feels like
could.
your mic is on a pillow. Like I've done that before, where like
It's,
my
I'm
my
holding
mic.
I'm holding it up to my face. Like I don't know if the option is.
If this is the best you can do, we'll work with it.
All right, awesome.
Yep.
Much obliged. So yeah, so I ran into a group which claimed to have the knowledge of via deduction of pretty much all things. It's the Gnostic approach, and I noticed that you guys are well, basically, the empirical view from scientists they are saying is wrong, and basically there's a few reasons for that, but in essence, the domain of the mind is the soul. So, and it's not to get too spiritual, but the reason that there's hard to find explanations is that they're not taking into account non-dimensional reality. Basically, everything is mathematics. All things we're math, and the end goal is goes right back to mathematics. It's not only the framework, but it's also the observer. So that's where
I mean, even if that were true, which even if that were true, which I don't think it is, but even if that were true,
yes,
there are many different mathematically consistent universes that you could imagine. And ours is just one of many. So I don't know how you could deduce the nature of our universe without actually going out and seeing what our universe looks like.
well, okay, so like the Big Bang, for example, like it's about consciousness, really, because the Big Bang, if you ask me if it happened, I'll say no, because there was no.
How is it about
conscious being
consciousness?
to observe it? Like the.
What does that have to do with anything?
Like the tree in the forest that if it falls, does it make a sound? That maximum.
Sure.
Well, what I say is that it doesn't, because if there's no being there that consciously witnesses it, then there's no proof that it happened, because it's all mathematical in nature. So, like the Big Bang was.
Hold on. What does that have to do with mathematics at all?
Well, it's everything's mathematics. I'm kind of anything.
Again,
I say,
big claim, but we can let it slide, I guess.
I mean, it's the explanation here. It's to answer the questions on these queries on things, physics, laws, things of that nature. Why do they exist, or why would God have, like was discussed earlier, the will versus, say, laws that exist in and of themselves. Leibniz is a great thinker who was not given the credit due, who explained a lot of these things via
We
math.
now have given him the credit due, but you're right. He was slandered, and
He was amazing, in my opinion. I mean,
I agree, but he's not going to agree with anything you've said.
well, I mean, I base what I say from what he has written.
Leibniz doesn't think everything is mathematics.
For all that is,
He invented calculus.
he did.
He didn't discover it. He invented it.
Well, mathematics is always there. See, that's the thing. Mathematics is
That's a claim that I reject.
Well, say for example, 2 + 2 = 4, whether we're here or not, right?
No.
So
Two plus and equals are all defined axiomatically, and they're defined by us.
they're defined by us via our interpretation of it, but that's your
Interpretation of what? We just made up axioms, and we defined what 2 is, we defined what plus is, we defined what equals is, and we defined what 4 is. And then
Yeah,
we said, well, there are these rules that we came up with, and if you combine these things that we invented in certain ways according to these rules, you get this other thing that we invented. Problem
Yeah,
solved.
we invented it through our interpretation. Mathematics is ahead of us. We found it. We found it. Like, we did not create it. We came upon mathematics.
I mean,
and so we utilize mathematics. And
what
so
sense do we use to discover mathematics? Like what sense organ do we use to discover mathematics?
our brain, our mind, and that's
So
connected to the
how can you distinguish
non-dimensional
between
realm.
discovering mathematics and inventing it if it's created in the mind?
It's not created in the mind; it's interpreted by the mind, via all our minds. So like I said, so like 2 + 2 = 4, and so that will not change. That is forever. That's eternal.
Well, it changes if you change your definition of these words.
What's that?
right? If you choose a different set of axioms, that's not true anymore. For example, if you work over the set of, the field of characteristic 3, then 2 + 2 = 1, not 4.
What's that? Wait, what?
Like there are different axiomatic systems that you can work on. It's actually not the field. Well, I guess it is the field of characteristic 3, but we can work modulo 3, in which case 2 + 2 = 1.
The limitations on mathematics is pretty much that comes down to infinity as a number, and also with quantum mechanics and the probability factors involved. But the numbers values remain the same. The mathematics is the only truly eternal a thing that there is. It's the ether. It's what our minds. We're all, be it Leibniz.
What does this have to do with God? What does this have to do with God?
Well, God is the accumulation of all the points. We're all points. Everything is represented in the non-dimensional realm as a point. So a point is a non-dimensional entity. And now God as an entity is the monad with a capital M. Which
This is why I like talking to Christians, because people think I target Christians, but I like talking to Christians because they don't say stuff like this, right? I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I'm trying to explain how it connects, how it all connects, because these things that you're describing, they're just bits and pieces which you're trying to put together in order to come to a conclusion that is satisfactory. For a scientist, for example, here with Dr. Blitz, which is excellent. I mean, it's very rare. Like you said, Christians, they don't have much to bring to the table, unfortunately. Because the Abrahamic faiths are very, just superstitious and just not based on anything mathematical. But it's these points are very.
Is God a mind?
God is mind. Well, the mind is non-dimensional reality.
I didn't ask what your
What does
definition
that
of
mean?
mind. I didn't ask for your definition of mind. I didn't ask for your.
There's one universe only.
I'm asking if God, true or false, God is a mind.
Yes, true.
Okay. Is God distinct from the natural world?
No, it's nothing outside of God. It's all part of God.
Are you a pantheist?
God is both physical and he's also mental, or as someone can say, spiritual.
Blitz, you have to do it. I can't do this.
Look. You can use these words in this way if you want, like when you refer to numbers and infinity and quantum, all this stuff. But the thing is like, in normal parlance, like these words have very specific meanings, and so it's very unclear what you're referring to.
It takes a while to explain it. It's the thing. It's not a. It's.
But like, why use words in a way that's different from how mathematicians and scientists might use those same words?
Well, give me an example of how I've done that.
You said that God is, or mind is non-dimensional reality.
Just like in calculus, yeah, that's it.
What? Wait, no, but what does calculus have to do with that?
It has everything. Calculus, Euler's equation is literally how the soul translates to the non-dimensional realm.
What?
Yes.
Euler's equation is just a trigonometric relationship. It has nothing to do with souls.
It does. That's what I'm saying that it does.
Okay.
It just does. Blitz.
Except it's
Blitz. It just does.
No, I can.
Euler's equation is just a specific case of the definition of the sine and cosine in terms of in terms of the real and imaginary pieces of the complex exponential. It has nothing to do with minds.
It's how the non-dimensional and dimensional interplay is your.
Are you saying that
transforms.
Imaginary numbers are non-dimensional and real numbers are dimensional?
That's true too. Yeah, imaginary numbers. Yeah.
That's not true at all.
All numbers.
The complex plane is two-dimensional.
Mathematics is on both sides, and so are we.
Of what?
We're more on the
Sides of what?
So yeah, imaginary numbers. They're all mathematics. I'm making the claim that mathematics is solid. It's real. You can't get realer than mathematics.
Can you go get me a 2?
What's that?
Can you go get me a 2?
Get you a 2? There's twos everywhere. Twos.
Well,
here,
how do you hand me a 2? You can hand me 2 of something, but then you're just handing me 2 objects, and those objects aren't 2.
Well, every object or any entity is represented by a point. So no matter what
That's not
it
true.
has a soul. It's the consciousness that makes us different.
How is every entity represented by a point?
Everything has a point to it. There's a point. It's non-dimensional.
Do you mean like a point as in like a purpose, or a point as in a position in space?
Of the position and your equations?
An equation isn't a point.
Oh, that's not the point, right? No. Look, the point
so
that you are
confused.
using when you're in an equation, for example, when you're doing calculus, right? You're dealing with points, correct?
Well, you're dealing with, yeah, sure.
I mean, it's pretty.
In particular,
part of an equation.
infinite collections of points, but sure.
There's points. There's no way around it, and that's the beauty of a point is that.
Yeah, but like
it's
it's not like
unclear.
any, like there are mathematical objects that can't be described as points. For example, abstract sets can't be described as points.
Well,
They
that's
don't
the
have
interplay
sufficient
between the
structure to have a point-like object.
Yeah, those are equations. They come about from the relation of various points, of which there's.
That's not, abstract sets don't come about from points or equations. Abstract sets are kind of defined axiomatically.
However, which way, it's a mathematical function or it's a mathematical result of whatever, an abstract or straightforward, whatever. I mean, it comes about from their interplay, and that's how you get the entire universe.
From what? The interplay of what?
Those points interplaying is where you get your reality, and not just that. I mean, we're in the physical realm, so like your mental thoughts only do so much, and well, they don't do anything really because you have to act. That's why.
Miguel,
No,
Miguel, it
the
would
world.
probably be quite helpful, and I say this with as much honesty as I can. It would be helpful if you went and took like a elementary, or picked up like an elementary or introductory set theory book,
Maybe, yeah, but I'm okay
because
either way.
a
Like,
lot
I
of what you're
don't
saying
need-
is just
I don't
is
need-
like based on this like kind of fundamental misunderstanding that mathematics is built from equations, but it's not.
I never
Equations
said
are
that,
built
though.
from, I mean,
I
in-
never said
in-
that.
I mean, you're saying you said that everything was a point, and then these equations are point. Like you've said a lot of things that. Can I just ask what your mathematical training is?
I've just read a lot of books. That's it.
Or
But
any of the math books?
I can fact check. I have friends who are mathematics. If anything comes down to that, I can relay.
But are any of the books
I'm
math
not a
books?
scientist or mathematician. No.
Are any of the books math books that you read?
I read the Tao of Physics years ago. I've read a bunch of books.
So
on
not
it.
a math book.
Yeah, I know. I'm not. That's the closest that I'm a layperson. I'm not. a
Okay.
mathematician.
So
I'm not.
so all I would say is that like I'm like I don't actually know any philosophy of mathematics books, but I'm sure that well, maybe Danny knows some, but like just an introductory set theory book would do you wonders.
I believe
If you want a
that. I
philosophy
do.
book, an
For my
intro to
personal
mathematics,
understanding.
if you want an intro to mathematics, philosophy, or introduction to philosophy of math, Oyston Linnebaugh, Philosophy of Math. I think that's a pretty good book
Well,
to start with.
philosophy of math. I mean, it's a philosophy book. I would think. I mean, it's. You're saying, Dr. Bliss is saying I should get more on the actual set theories or actual math, which is probably true. But that's my choice of if I want to or not. I don't. In other words, I don't have anybody really to impress.
Do you have a wife,
the only-
Miguel?
I'd like to see somebody say something to the contrary.
Look, Miguel, do you have a wife or girlfriend?
Sure, I have a girlfriend. Yeah.
Okay. Have you tried to explain this to her?
No.
Okay. Here's if you
Only
get
for
hurt,
that. Yeah,
you
the
can
answer question.
come back when you've successfully explained your view to your wife. Okay, that's how you test whether you. If you can't explain it to your wife, you can't explain it to anyone because your wife is going to be the nicest person to you, and will try to understand you with all her heart. But if she can't understand you, that means you got to think about how to word it. You got to think about. You got to come back.
But she's not. Somebody has to query and ask, and then they can learn. In other words, if you're not open to receive it by asking, then I don't. It's not really worth the effort on that end.
I'm telling you that this is a good look. Anything that I've learned in my classes or in my studies, I can teach my wife. It might take an hour because she's not a philosopher, but I know anything that I know, I could get my wife to understand. That's how I know that that I'm ready to explain it to other people. Okay, so just stick to that rule, and then come back when you've successfully explained all this to your wife. I'm sorry, why If she can hear me, I'm so sorry.
It's good advice. It's good advice. I mean, I'm not gonna literally do that, but it's good advice.
You should literally do that.
I mean,
Right, and then she will politely and lovingly tell you that you don't make any sense.
I mean, it's not. There's people that know this and understand it. It's not that it doesn't make sense.
You don't make any sense. You could. You don't make any sense.
Where does it not make sense? I mean, let's start back from the beginning.
No, I don't want to go through it again. Just come back when your wife understands. Come back, okay? That's the rule. That's the rule, Miguel. If I ever see you again, I'm gonna ask you. Did you explain this to your wife? Does she understand? If you say yes, I'll hear you out. Okay.
My problem. It's funny because, and no shade at you, Danny. Mathematical Platonists.
Thanks for bringing
the
up.
ones I talk to often mathematical Platonists aren't people who know a lot of math, who haven't done set theory, who haven't proven things, who haven't looked at how things are constructed in like a formal way.
Yeah, I think I don't. Yeah, maybe there's a conversation for us to have.
I mean, I know that you taught math, so like you're probably the exception to the rule,
I taught
right?
Algebra 1. I taught Algebra 1 for one semester because they couldn't find a math teacher. But
fair.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't even.
I mean, and there are mathematical Platonists who are mathematicians, but to me, it just seems so obvious that like you just make up the rules and then you figure out what those rules say. So
yeah,
anyway.
we should talk about it later probably. But
yeah, that's fine.
I want to be anonymous.
Yeah, I think he's talking.
Okay, what's that polemic? What do you want to talk about? Polemic?
Can you bring me back up if I come out?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on a second.
Okay. Let me kick you and then I'll wait for your re-request. Yeah, but I want to be I want to nominalize mathematics. That's actually my tendency. I just don't know how yet. I haven't really, it's easy to be a Platonist. It really is. Like it's easy to assert, I think that you have to do a little bit more work to think about how to nominalize things like that.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks for bringing me back.
Yeah. What do you want?
Yeah, I had an echo.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So
I think next time you can minimize your app and come back in. That should fix it.
I tried like moving. I don't know, putting the camera on and off. That's what they say.
It doesn't matter anymore. But
all right. So let's start off a conversation by saying there is no God. The Big Bang just happened. The sun, the earth, the moon, everything formed on its own. And now the earth is a bubbling, boiling blob of stew, right? Or whatever they call it. What's the first organism? That's the question. What's the first
its name is Luca.
Oh, what's that, Luca?
Yeah, his name is Luca.
Oh, I thought it was Danny. I'm sorry.
No. That was the name of the first organism. The first organism's name is Luca.
Okay, what was that? Bacteria?
It was a Luca. That was the thing that it was.
Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, Luca stands for last universal common ancestor. It's technically not the first organism, but it's close enough. It was some sort of single-celled organism
Right.
that did not have a cellular nucleus.
Okay, didn't have a cellular. How did it get around? Did it move or function?
I mean, it was a single-celled organism. It almost certainly didn't have flagella.
Okay, so it didn't move. It just like drifted. Or...
I mean, it could have just drifted.
Okay, well that's where I'm going. Flagella. Okay.
Could it have cilia or no?
It probably didn't, because we know that there are cells. We know that there are single-celled organisms that don't. So.
And I think cilia is like
not a biologist.
Multiple flagellums, from what I understand. So
cilia are just little flagella.
Yes, little flagellums, which is even more miraculous than regular flagellum. So here we go with flagellum. How many proteins are made to build up a flagellum? You would need proteins, right? Where would
at
proteins come from? No,
yeah,
I think it was scientists say there's 14 proteins that are needed to create the flagellum. And there's 17 components of the flagellum. And they said for the flagellum to just create itself, it would have to be like a 747 crashing, the wind picking up all the parts and reassembling the 747 back together. And it would
Let's
take
say
a
that's
trillion,
true. The universe is very big.
Yeah, and it would take a trillion years for that to happen.
Okay, the universe is very, very big.
Okay, so do you think that that's even possible? That
Well, I don't think that it's as unlikely as they're saying it is, because that's usually just assuming particles are randomly configured when we know that there are chemical forces at work, chemical bonds that form preferentially over other chemical bonds. So it seems more plausible than just randomly shuffling atoms and hoping you get a flagellum. But
Well-
yeah, I mean, even if the chances are 1 in a trillion, the universe has, like, our galaxy alone has 1 trillion planets in it.
right,
And there's
so
100 billion galaxies in the observable universe.
So instead of it being like 14 billion years old, it would have to be, the universe would have to be 1 trillion billion years old.
No, because
How
the
many
point
years
is
would a
you
trillion
don't need to
trillion
have.
be?
Look. So let's say that the odds of a flagellum arising is 1 in a trillion. Well, our galaxy alone has 1 trillion planets, and there are 100 billion galaxies in the observable universe. So that
Okay.
would be what, 100 quintillion planets on average. That the law of very large numbers say that it's bound to happen.
Mm,
Inevitable, in fact.
I guess
And-
an analogy. Take the lottery, right? Let's say there's 1 billion people in the lottery. That's kind of exaggerating. There's going to be a winner, right?
yeah, but that's not how life is made. It's made by what was before it to genetically make the components to build it. So there had to be some kind of design. I mean, when you look at the flagellum, it's a motor. It's legitimately a motor. So everybody that's in this room,
The
with
lovely thing is
flagellum,
that we've all agreed that the Luca almost certainly didn't have any flagella. So we don't need to explain how the flagella came from nothing, because it didn't come from nothing. It came from some prior living organism.
and that's a tested physical fact of this thing, or that's a
What do you mean by? I mean, like we can trace genetics back, and we can find out what features things would have had. and
no,
what
that
features
first
things wouldn't have had.
organism. Do we have any kind of fossils of this?
We have
item?
things like genetic reconstructions.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about that. So that's where I see a maker. I see a maker in all the amazing things that the world has to offer.
Okay, we don't. So now do we do?
Yeah, well, if there's 500 people in this room, I would ask them all to look up the flagellum and see it's more amazing
It's
than their lawnmower in
flagellum.
their
There's no
house.
N. There is no N.
Okay, Brainiac. Got it.
I
guess
I
you guys
just-
are smarter than the rest.
I just had to look. I just keep laughing every time you say it, so I was just so you won't make a mistake again.
I keep laughing every time I hear your voice. Sounds like a little woman.
Okay.
Blitz. He ran. Why are these people so angry? I don't get it. Blitz, what did you do?
I corrected his word, I guess, and that pissed him off.
Oh my god.
I mean, look, like I thought I was being fairly charitable. It's flagellum, not flagellum,
The misogyny
because everybody was laughing at him.
The misogyny was crazy, but from his point of view, right? And I would never say this, but from his point of view, he thinks women are emotional. But what he did was just the emotional thing, rage quit. So from his perspective, right, he should give himself the insult that he gave you. Crazy. That's crazy. Sensitive people, man. All right. Suk and I'm assuming that you had a quick question because I'm looking for ops.
Hello. God is a good, great explanation for this world. God is calculus. God is.
Oh my God, Suk, not like this.
Get him out of here. Get him out of here.
Does he watch you too?
Yeah,
Does
he
he
shows
watch
up
it?
from time
Yeah.
to time.
Okay. Galaxy Girl, did you have a quick question? Yeah, I don't know. It says that we're friends.
Hey, Danny.
Hey.
Okay. So I have a couple of questions, but I promise I'll try and be like as quick and like annoying
fine.
as like possible. Okay.
It's okay. There's no one wants to talk to us so far. There's only 2 people in the request box. So.
Okay. So can I start with Blitz? Because like I have a hard time like understanding philosophy. Like you know that already.
Same.
So Blitz, can you like prove to me like scientifically, like what's your biggest proof that there isn't a God, like at all?
It's not a scientific proof. Science doesn't talk about things that we don't have empirical evidence for. I mean, look, the way I see it is that first you have to get past logical problems. Once you get past logical problems, then we can start talking about whether there's empirical evidence for it. But I mean, currently there's no empirical evidence, and so the scientific, the kind of the scientific way of thinking, you might call it the rational way of thinking, is that in the absence of some sort of empirical evidence that discounts other hypotheses, you remain skeptical, you remain agnostic. So like, people will say like, oh, has the universe always existed, or was there a first cause? I don't know. I'm happy to say I don't know. And so similarly, in the absence of empirical evidence that discounts alternative hypotheses for like the beginning of like life or trees or whatever, I'll just be like, yeah, I mean, there's no evidence for this claim, so it's reasonable to discount it for now. Now, the logical issues, the philosophical issues, perhaps, the one that bothers me the most is the atemporality of God. God presumably created time, and so I don't know what it would mean for there to exist an entity that exists in a non-temporal way, that in any way that's distinct from like, a book.
Okay.
Like a mind that exists outside of time seems like it would just be a book and not like an agent.
Okay, but like, okay, according to like Einstein's like theory of like, I don't know, like the arrow of time, right? We're talking about like the arrow of time, right? So like,
Sure.
we don't even know how we move in time. So how could we ever like?
I don't know what you mean by how. What do you mean by how we move through time?
Okay.
Like I can tell you how we move through time at 1 second per second.
Okay, like physically, we can move through time, but we don't know why we can't go back in.
Why
time.
we can't move backwards? Yeah, that is an interesting question. We don't know why. I mean, there are thoughts like that. It comes from thermodynamics. That's certainly an interesting question that we don't know the answer
like,
to.
how
at
could
least
we
fully.
like, if we don't understand how we can't move through time, like we can't, like it would be hard to like discuss like how God does it, or like how God.
I
is
wouldn't have a
outside
problem
of
with time travel. I wouldn't have a problem with a time traveling God. If God was a time traveler and just went back and backwards and forwards and blah 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 blah, that's one thing. But God exists outside of time, which is
Right.
so much trickier.
Yeah, like I just think like there's like a lot we don't understand in physics. Like, okay, like not I'm not a physics major. Like, let's be real. But like I feel like there's a lot that we don't know, like about like, time in general. Like, you know what I'm saying? Maybe.
Sure, but
Okay.
I mean, look, when and Danny can correct me on this, but like when people use the phrase agent or mind or something like that, like it seems like it has like an inherently temporal characterization. Like it's a thing that does things. It's a thing that has changing mental states, right? Like it's some sort of like dynamical thing. So it seems like it doesn't make sense to call anything that exists atemporally.
It either doesn't
mind.
make sense, either Blitz is right, or you could think of it this way: that suppose there can be such a mind that exists statically. Even there, I think you would need time. But the issue here is that even the coherent conception, because remember what Blitz is basically saying. Okay, let's rule out all the conceptions of God that are illogical. Okay.
Mhm.
Now we're left with a certain set of hypotheses or conceptions of God that could have it. That could exist. But the problem with each of these conceptions is that we have priors about how minds are, right? All the minds that you and I agree exist, we agree that Blitz exists. We agree that sometimes chat acts like a robot. Like I just muted Jones because he's fucking annoying. Pretty sure he's an NPC, okay? But everybody has minds, and we think of minds as not only depending on our central nervous system, like that they would depend on nature, but they constantly go through processes of change, okay? And so for someone to say, well, look, there's a mind out there that doesn't go through processes, doesn't go through a process of change when it's thinking and making decisions. And unlike all the other minds we agree on, both in humans and non-human animals, it doesn't depend on nature. It doesn't depend on a central nervous system. And then it's suddenly saying something like, there's something living out there, but that's not cellular or not made of atoms, right? I mean, in principle, could you have something living without atoms? Logically speaking, maybe, but it's just so unexpected that if we were to find something living that's not cellular or not made of like carbon or silicon or anything that can make 4 bonds, right? I guess.
Like 1 second, 1 second.
Am I going too fast?
No. I just have like one point I want to
course.
say. Like, so, okay, non-changing, sure, maybe, but like, can we like also consider like maybe just existing in all forms? Like, you know, like Socrates says, like, oh, like we're made up of multiple forms, and our highest form is good, right? So like. Like,
I don't know if he would say it that way, but
well, I don't know.
Okay.
I only took one class in it, so like,
I mean, there was talk of form. So remember, we basically only know about Socrates because of Plato.
right. So like, okay, what if because of how many like forms he has to be as a like all powerful, like all able being, right? He has to be all of what can be.
Okay. You're not a
Right.
Christian, are you? Because
Well, we talked about this. Like, I'm just trying to deconstruct and
Okay.
reconstruct.
I'm just wondering how much I can assume in the background. Let me assume nothing then. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Look, it's for at least for Blitz and I. If someone is saying that there's something out there that is a mind that's so radically distinct from the kind of minds that you and I agree exist, it just seems like it's extremely implausible by itself, and especially when we don't see any kind of independent verification, or if it. I mean,
It also just seems like equivocation. Like it just seems like you're using the word mind to kind of like assign some sort of agency, some sort of thing that's something like us, but you're referring to nothing that is at all like us in any way. And so why use the word? Like the word carries weight, and it just seems like there's a lot of baggage to that word that is kind of shoved under the rug if we apply it to God as well.
Well, okay, and this is the question like I wouldn't like really come up and ask. Like, okay, is it possible that like we're kind of an example? Okay. All right, let me simple way I think I can explain this. Okay, is it possible that our God is bad? Like, let's just say he's bad. Is that like logically possible? I don't think that's logically possible, because like, why would we exist?
First of all, I think
to
it's
experience suffering.
Yeah, that's the evil God couldn't want to torture us.
I mean, maybe, but like, I feel like, I don't know.
Well, look, if you have an all evil God, guess what problem you have?
What?
Well, what do you have what problem is there if there's an all good God?
I don't know.
The problem of evil.
Okay.
If you have an all evil God, then you have the problem of good.
Okay. But like, okay. Do you guys believe in free will at all? Or okay, I know this is an old ass argument, but like, I'm not trying to be like annoying. So like, I'm just trying to discuss it. So like, okay, do you guys believe in free will? Like, and what kind of free will?
Remember, Blitz and I agree on one thing, but we disagree on another. We both think that there is no free will in this libertarian sense. Like that is either nonsense or whatever.
None at all. Okay.
No, libertarian. Look, because people mean different things. It's kind of like moral or good or bad. People mean different things by it.
You believe that like everything is influenced by like either internal or like external forces, right? Like there's no free will. Like we can't make the choice, you feel like?
Well, basically, when I like to talk in terms of, I like to understand free will in terms of voluntary and involuntary. So when you voluntarily do something, you freely did it. When you involuntarily do something, you were forced to do it. Right now, I don't think Blitz thinks that the free will stuff tracks a different conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I see that as I think voluntary and involuntary is a useful concept, but when I think of the free will conversation, I think of like it seems to like imply some sort of like non-material causal agent that lives inside your head and makes your brain do things in a non-predictable way, and that seems made up.
I don't know. 'Cause, like,
Well,
I'm
do you
like,
think we have free will? Let's see what happens here. Well, do you think we have free will?
I think I believe how Parker does when it's like both. Like I feel
Parker
like
takes my view.
Parker's
yeah,
Parker's a compatibilist, which is cope, but that's
I'm
fine.
sorry. I know I related to somebody on this, and it wasn't an op, I promise. But it was
Was it Dean?
It might have been Dean. Okay, so like basically,
I think Dean. Does Dean believe in free will?
I
No,
haven't
Dean
talked to
believes in
Dean about it.
objective morals, but I don't know if he
I,
believes in
yeah,
free wills.
we're trying to fix Dean, so.
He's
kidding.
a project, right?
Yeah, well, I think he's a more realist, or he was. But I think so. We're fixing his philosophical views. But anyways, look. Here's maybe Blitz is right. Maybe he's wrong. Here's what I have to say. There are cases where you're forced to do things, and there are cases when you're not. Okay, we have to make sense of that. We have to make sense of that. For people that think that there's no sense in which you can be forced to do something, those people are crazy to me. Okay, you have those sorts of people. They're not common though. Usually people will cope and go to compatibilism before they give up on that. Okay, I don't think compatibilism is good, but the the idea is that what does it mean to be forced to do something? And I think it's really simple. You're doing something that you really don't want to do. And that's all I need to make sense of social interactions. And that's all I need to communicate to people when I say I was forced to do that, or that was not, I'm less free than you are. That's all I need to understand that the slave has less freedom than the slave owner.
Okay,
That's
like
all I need.
I'm thinking like on terms of like, okay, maybe I didn't understand all of that because like I'm still like trying to think like, but like, so like I'm trying to say like physically, sure, like there are like limits, but like I'm talking about like wanting, like, or like if like in the moment, like sure, like okay, I don't know what I'm saying.
Wait, look. Okay, look. Do you think when you're forced to do you have to go to work?
Huh?
Do you have work? Do you have to go to work? Do you like your job?
Yeah, I have a job.
You
Yeah.
like it?
Yeah, I like my job.
Oh, damn it. Okay. Have
Okay,
you ever
let's
had a
say
job
I
you
don't
don't?
like. There
Have
are
you ever had a
aspects of my job that I don't like. So go ahead.
Okay,
Sure,
so
I hate
you
my
probably
job.
had people have had jobs now. Or very simple. My job requires me to get up early. I hate doing that shit. I hate getting up early. I woke up at 12 today. Blitz
Right.
woke me up. Okay. I hate getting up early. I've been suffering because I'm a teacher. I have to get up early. I hate that shit. I am forced to wake up every morning. Or if I have to wake up before 9 a.m., I'm being forced to do it. My work forces me to do it. The need for money forces me to do it. Okay.
Right.
So now when I'm able to do what I want to do and sleep until 1 p.m., I'm more free than during the weekday when I have work. What else do we need here? What am I missing?
Okay. And I don't think you're missing anything because you know more about it than me. It's me.
Then this it's either that you can understand free will in the way that I just explained it, or Blitz is right, and the free will conversation detracts from the important concept that's going on when we're being, when you have to get up for work, or when you have to go to work, or when you're being tied to a chair, right? Like, I think that philosophers should be more interested in how we use terms in our everyday life rather than being distracted by this like ethereal conversation about whether there's universal causality or whether that's false and free will is possible. Like,
You don't think it's interesting?
Well, it's interesting, but it misses the mark for me. Like, I like talking about Star Wars sometimes, right? But some of these philosophers get stuck in the clouds.
Uh-huh.
Right? When I'm like, look, there's a very simple concept of coercion. Okay. I'm forced to get up in the morning. What does that mean? It means that that's not what I really want to do. I want to sleep in, but the need for money causes me to do something that I don't want to do ideally. Okay. And yeah, maybe that needs to be broken down a little bit more. Like we have to differentiate between different types of desires and blah blah blah. But I don't need any of this. Like, and to understand what's going on there, I don't need fancy conceptions of free will. I just don't.
Okay.
By the way, Danny, I probably have to go in a few minutes. Whenever
Yeah,
my mom
okay,
decides
yeah.
to WhatsApp me.
Yeah. That's
I only have
perfect.
a few more questions, but
A few more.
okay, they're quick questions. I
Okay.
promise. But like, I'd like some like explanation of like why. Okay, so like it doesn't have to do with like God, but I feel like it's in the realm of like, you know, paranormal or like just like, you know, like spiritual shit or whatever, right? Okay. You guys believe in ghosts?
Well, okay. Look, Blitz has to go soon. I want to get one more person, and then
Okay.
Blitz can leave. But
Okay.
just curious, you used to be a Christian, right? I forgot.
Or I am still like I'm trying to figure it out.
Right. So what happens is if you start with a religion and then you start to question it, and then you don't want to jump straight into atheism. Like,
No.
you know, there's this phase
Yeah.
that people go through, right? Like it's the phase of like pantheism and woo woo and Deepak Chopra. Okay, it's a phase, right? Like
Hopefully.
You want to say there's something out there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you really do. Okay. Yeah, I get it. It's a difficult intuition to overcome, especially when you start with religion. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what I should prescribe you.
I don't know.
I don't know because that
I'm
intuition. I used to
trying.
have it. I used to have that intuition. I didn't know how to get rid of it. I used to have the intuition that, like, if I saw a tree, I was like the guy that says "tree, therefore God." That was me. Like,
Yeah.
how could you look at a tree and not think that there's something out there? That was me, and it took years for me to get rid of that intuition.
I don't know if it's like intuition, like more like I feel like I've had like a lot of spiritual experiences like throughout my life.
Yeah.
And like I know that sounds so odd, but like it just feels like so real
Do
to
you think
me.
people that are on drugs have spiritual experiences?
I mean, yeah, but I wasn't on drugs.
Okay, but look, drug is just a cause. There can be other causes.
I don't know. Like it was like an emotional thing. Like it was like just like
I'm not saying it was.
like actual like experiences. Like if I prayed for something like really specific, it would happen. Or if I asked for like a
You
sign,
gotta
That's my
go,
time.
Blitz. All right,
it
see ya,
would
Blitz.
happen. Okay, bye, Blitz. Sorry.
Well, you know, this is a Sunday thing that I usually do with Blitz, but yeah, I mean, we should talk more, I guess.
Mhm.
But you know, if it's a prayer thing, one thing that really bothers me about people that point to prayer as evidence is that there are billions of people that have prayed for
I
things like,
know.
you know, you already know this stuff.
I
Right?
do, but like I'm talking specific things, and it will happen like and when there was no possibility of it happening, it happened. And like it's not just that, it was like also like I've had like a near death experience, and like
Mhm.
you know, it was like kind of as described. So like because like I've looked into like other religions. I've like, you know, read I'm a history major. Okay,
Mhm.
like and like I understand the inconsistencies that exist in the Bible with like what actually like possibly happened in historical like, you know, records and everything.
Well, look, I need to wrap this up, but here's
Okay.
look.
Sorry.
I don't even think it's irrational.
No.
For
I'm
thinking
trying
that
not
there's
to
some.
be.
I know, but I don't think it's irrational for someone to, based on their experience, to think there's something out there.
Right.
Like I don't think, like, if someone really did have a crazy experience and then you just thought, look, there's got to be something out there. I wouldn't really say that they're being irrational. Maybe you had a I mean, like, could there have been, could aliens have abducted some of these people that reported that they got abducted? That's possible. And if you really did have an experience where there's a UFO above you and they sucked you up and spat you back out, that person isn't irrational for believing that there's aliens, right? So if you really had these crazy experiences, given those priors, given your experiences, it may be fine to believe that there's something out there. That's not for me to judge at that point.
But Danny, I'm trying to figure out what, because like I don't understand like what is like.
You have to be
like,
comfortable
what I've
with the
experienced.
possibility that you'll never know.
That's not comfortable for me.
Look, there's always going to be a point where you never know, but I got to end it here. All right.
All right, bye.
Okay, bye guys. Like I said, we're going to try to do this every Sunday, Blitz and I, if I get up early enough. But thanks for coming on. If you missed any of it, it's on my YouTube channel, so you can watch there. But y'all take care.